This is a better way. Hey guys, welcome to today's episode, and thank you for always listening, for sharing, and also for exploring healing with me. Okay, so today I want us to talk about something that has piqued my curiosity and something that you probably must have noticed in your own life, right? And that is, why is it that sometimes you find it easy opening up to a stranger that you just met? Maybe you sat beside this person on a flight, or maybe it's even the taxi driver who took you home, or somebody you just maybe sat beside while you were waiting to board at the airport. And you tell this person something very personal that you find hard to even tell somebody you've known since childhood. It's fascinating, isn't it? Now, while trust is not a gift, it should be earned. We know that. You know that. I know that. But when it comes to complete strangers, it sort of feels safer to speak to this person, sharing your deepest struggles, than with somebody that you probably know, you share some sort of bond with. And the interesting thing is, it can leave you with some guilt, right? Why does this happen? What leads to this? Is it that you are not a good friend? Is it that there is betrayal of friendship? That's really what I want to explore in this particular episode. Now, the first thing that really causes this is one thing I call the lack of consequences. Now, what this means is that it feels safe to speak to a stranger because you believe that somehow, there will be no consequences for this information you have shared, which means you won't run into them randomly at your family get together or in your religious gathering or somewhere. So there's really no consequence, right? So it feels sort of safer. And in psychology, there's something we call catharsis, which is the ability to unload without attachment, which means that you were not necessarily considering the person whom you're speaking to. You're not considering their capacity to handle what you're saying. You're not considering whether or not what you're saying is going to be difficult for them to be able to hold or anything. Now, these are sort of the first two reasons why you would easily just do that. Then the last is the neutrality of strangers. Oh, this is the part that gets really very interesting. We fundamentally believe that strangers are neutral. And what neutral means is, compared to the people that we have in our lives, compared to our friends, compared to the role that they play in our lives, right? We can lean safely to strangers because they would not judge us. They will not take any position. They will probably just sit down there and listen without wanting to judge you and say, oh, but you are always the strongest, but you look like you have your life all figured out. But you are the one encouraging me the other day, but you are the one who's always on point. So, what exactly is happening? Right? So, these three things, which is one, the fact that the stranger, there is no consequences speaking to this person. Secondly, you don't have any attachment to this person. And thirdly, there's a perception of neutrality with the stranger. These are the three primary reasons why you'll find it quite easy to speak to a stranger and not to somebody that you know. Now, if you've ever spoken to a stranger and your heart feels lighter and you may never see them again, and you feel guilty, like you feel like, okay, I'm not opening up to my friends, I'm not being there for my friends, but I seem to just be myself around strangers, right? It's not because you are not loyal. It is not because the friendship is sort of derailing, for lack of a better word. It's just that fundamentally we are all wired to seek safety. And these three elements provide safety for us, especially with things that we are very embarrassed about, the things that we don't want the world to see or know about us, right? That's really the reason why it's very, very easy for us to be able to speak to them in that way. Because when you think about it, a stranger can often feel natural. They don't come with baggages or histories or roles. They don't expect you to be the funny one, the relatable person, the all strong macho person, compared to the people that you know in your life. Because when you think about it, right, your family and your friends, as much as they love you, right, they hold fixed roles inside our lives, which means that it's almost like when you think about it, okay, if there's somebody you want to go to for, just bounce a sounding board, you kind of have somebody in your mind. If there's someone you want to just go to for, okay, let's just go have a good time, there's somebody in your mind. Now, you can imagine if you want to go to somebody whom is a sounding board, and you want to share with them something that you feel will embarrass you or will make them see you in a different light, what do you think will happen? You'll be very hesitant. You really will be very hesitant. So these unspoken rules, right? It feels risky to show them your messy side. It feels a bit awkward. I don't want no nah, because quite frankly, the world in which we live in today more and more encourages us to show a curated side of ourselves. And I know there's a lot of word around, oh, be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. But the reality really is that oftentimes when people ask you to be yourself, they are asking you to be a version of yourself that is acceptable to them. So, if you really be yourself, if you really choose to be yourself around them, the chances are that they are not able to handle it. So, this awareness is one of the reasons why we'll deploy these three tools, right? To be able to self protect. So, it's not like you're a bad person. It's not like, you are doing anything wrong. But is there really a downside to unboxing to absolute strangers? I wouldn't be quick to jump into a conclusion to say yes. I would like to share and invite you to examine it and tell me what you really think. As always, the comment section or my DM will be open for us to have this discussion. Now, when you think about a stranger and the safety of speaking to a stranger, think about what capacity does this stranger have to be able to plant a seed in my mind about this particular thing. Now, let's look at it this way. You walk into a bar, right? You just see somebody, you don't know them from Adam, you're having a bad day, and you're talking to them about your relationship that has just hit the rocks. Meanwhile, to every other person, you're the guy that has it all figured out and all that and all that. Because you don't want that shame, you now speak to this person. It's easier, it feels safer, but is it necessarily the best thing for you to do at that time? Knowing fully or thinking about it in this way, that there are chances that this person will just make a, in quote, harmless recommendation to you. Now you are in a vulnerable state. And as I have said before, we can be in resourceful and unresourceful state at different points in time. Now, in this unresourceful state, someone plants a seed, which I will call a thought, in your mind. In that moment, you may just discard it or may not want to just accept it. But that seed has been planted. Chances are that that seed then goes on to become what I call a self fulfilling prophecy. In other words, it's almost like you go out and then everything is confirming what this person recommended or said. Take, for example, the person just said, well, if the marriage isn't working, why not just leave? Or you can always just find somebody else and life is not that hard. It seems like a simple, harmless, you know, talk. But every time you just remember, life is not that hard. Life is not that hard. I deserve to be happy. And before you know what's happening, confirmation bias really, really begins to set in. And before you know what's happening, you're down a particular road that you cannot even recognize. There's a particular saying that I love so much. It says that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, what about you decide to speak to somebody who has both capacity and can provide that safe space where you don't need to perform, you don't need to worry about the load you're dropping on them, and finally, you are not afraid of any consequence. That person is a trained therapist. So, this is my invitation for you to consider getting a therapist. And it's important because you don't need a therapist when you're broken. You need a therapist so that you don't become broken. And like one of the things that have always come to my mind is it's always easier to raise healthy children than to repair broken adults. And that's really why I'm very passionate about family life, and building family systems. Because the amount of work we have to do, in being able to, redress the mind, for lack of a better word, is lesser when we start early to build people into families. So, if you are feeling guilty about not being able to open up to your friends and tell them, how you really, really feel, it's time to put down that cloth of guilt. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you are not trustworthy. It just means that you're seeking safety. But that safety that you seek can lead you into trouble if we consider what I had just said, right? So think about it, and this is probably your cue to go for therapy. I'm rooting for you. So next time when you run into a stranger, you might want to speak to them, but for life altering, life changing decisions, maybe they are not the right person that you should speak to because you really do not know them. I remember what I said when I started: trust is not a gift, it must be earned. Has this stranger earned your trust? I'm rooting for you.